Why would anyone like haunted houses? Do they really want to see ghosts? This episode shares two stories about haunted house where terrifying strange things happened. One is the White House, posted on April 7th, 2011. And the other was posted on July 10th, 2016. Titled The Abandoned Dormitory. Posts have been included by a professional Japanese as famous horror works, both rated S class. Although both stories are about haunted house exploration and both happened during high school, they are actually very different. The White House was posted on a professional ghost story website. The plot is tense and thrilling, one event leading to another, while The Abandoned Dormitory was posted on an online forum. The original poster just narrated his own experience. The narration lacks logical construction and explanations, so there are some things he himself still doesn't understand. But often, this kind of authentic post feels more frightening. And the comments on these two stories are also very different. Under The White House, it's mostly like, this story is very well written. The plot is captivating, so scary. While under The Abandoned Dormitory, people directly say, so and scary, then share their own similar experiences, etc. So, I put these two different styled as class stories in the same episode. You can also compare and feel which type you prefer. But hold your phone firmly while watching. When I was reading the post, I was so scared I held my phone far away and accidentally dropped and broke it. In first person, the White Vortex. In my hometown town, there was a rumored haunted house. It was a white two-story building located at the edge of the town with a spacious courtyard covering quite a large area. It was built just about 2 years ago. Then a family of 4 moved in, a middle-aged couple and their 2 daughters. I remember the father was a university professor. The mother seemed kind and amiable. The 2 daughters were about the same age as me. However, just over a month after they moved in, tragedy struck. The mother and elder daughter was strangled by the father. The father then hanged himself. I heard the younger sister witness the father strangling her sister and hid in terror, thus escaping from her father's hands. Later, the younger sister was taken away by distant relatives. This ownerless house remains undemolished to this day, standing there in an eerie manner. This is all I knew about this haunted house before entering. As for why I went in, perhaps because I was young then, and very curious, or maybe it was ignorance and fearlessness. It was during my summer vacation in first year of my classmate's muse and shooting, and I decided to explore that haunted house. We planned to take some photos to show off to other classmates after school started, around PM that day. The 3 of us brought flashlights and a camera, and some simple tools, sneaked out of our homes and rode bicycles to that White House. This place, being at the edge of the town, is very remote. This White House looks all alone, coupled with its strikingly bright white exterior at night. It looks as if it's been isolated by the entire town. To avoid being discovered, the 3 of us parked our bicycles a bit farther away. Then we cautiously approached the house. First, we circled around to inspect it. We found that not only was the door locked, but it also had an additional padlock. Besides that, all the windows on the first floor were nailed shut with wooden planks, leaving no gaps. We couldn't see inside. The second floor windows, although not boarded up, had newspapers pasted all over the glass, so we still couldn't see in. We discussed it and decided to find a window to climb through. So we went to the backyard, because it was more hidden and less likely to be noticed. After looking around, we finally chose the small kitchen window. But this window was a bit high, so we stacked a few large wooden crates from behind the house to use as a scaffold. Unexpectedly, removing the wooden planks was easier than we imagined. After these planks were removed, I leaned on the windowsill and looked inside. It was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. I turned on my flashlight. The light shone through the glass. I could faintly see a cupboard and a table inside. It seemed the furniture and household items were all left untouched inside the house. To be able to open the window, Muse used a screwdriver to tap the glass as lightly as possible. He wanted to break a hole in the glass so he could reach in and open the latch. But in the end, a large piece of glass shattered with a crashing sound. However, after the sound, the eerie house returned to silence. The window with its broken glass was finally opened. The window opening was narrow, even with our high scorer builds. We could only barely squeeze through. We carefully avoided the glass shards. Muse went in first, followed by Zhujing. I held the flashlight to light their way, and was the last to enter. Once inside, we landed on the kitchen countertop. As soon as I jumped out, the stainless steel surface let out a dull thud. Muse and Zhujing, who entered first, were already scanning the kitchen with their flashlights, making hum sounds from time to time. I didn't know if they were amazed or thought this so-called haunted house was nothing special. I crouched on the countertop, shining my light around. The kitchen was relatively tidy, although the floor, table, chairs, everything was covered in a layer of dust, making it look hazy under the light. Everything was neatly arranged. It felt like with a little cleaning, it could be lived in immediately. Even the dishes in the cupboard were clean enough to be used directly. I asked Muse and Zhujing to stand in front of the sink to take a photo of them. Suddenly, Zhujing said, "Hey, Muse, is your hand okay?" Muse's hand was dripping blood. He looked up and said, "Damn, this must have happened just now. When we came in, got cut by the glass. But it's fine. The cut isn't big, and it doesn't hurt." Then he shook his hand and walked off on his own further into the house. Zhujing and I followed closely behind. Past the kitchen was the living room. It was spacious and orderly. Apart from a layer of accumulated dust, it wasn't much different from an ordinary family's living room. In the corner of the living room was a large clock. Its hands had stopped, although it might not have stopped on the day of the incident. This clock seemed to symbolize that this house had stopped altogether. I felt a tinge of sadness, but other than that, this place was so orderly, nothing had happened. This gave all three of us a sense of disappointed relaxation. After roughly exploring the living room, we opened the door leading to the hallway. The hallway was pitch black. We didn't enter directly. We raised our flashlights to shine light to the very end. There were doors on both sides of the hallway, one on the left and two on the right. Further inside on the right was the staircase to the second floor, and further down, the Genkan entryway with the main door was visible. Then Zhujing asked, "What now?" Muse replied, "Let's go further and see." The three of us entered the hallway. Once inside, we clearly felt the atmosphere here was different from the living room. The air seemed heavier and more oppressive. Even the smell felt different. No one spoke. I raised my camera and took a photo towards the Genkan. The flash went off, momentarily lighting up the surroundings. I thought I saw something on the left door. I quickly shone my flashlight over. I found several talismans pasted on the door. This discovery stunned all three of us. It seemed we were all thinking the same thing. Then Muse suggested, "Then let's open the doors on the right first." Zhujing and I immediately agreed, because the two doors on the right had no talismans. After opening the first door, it was a changing room and bathroom. I took a photo of the bathroom. Nothing particularly noteworthy. Then we opened the second door. It was a toilet. Similarly, nothing caught our attention. We returned to the hallway. Muse pointed at the door on the right with the talisman paper and said, his voice a bit tense, "Then, shall we check that one out?" Zhujing hesitated, but still opened the door. Inside was a study. There was an imposing desk, and various strange masks and decorations hung on the walls. A large bookshelf held many books that looked difficult to understand. There were also some ornaments from unknown countries. We were drawn to these relics, and momentarily forgot our fear. Jujing seemed to have found something on the bookshelf, and said, "Hey, come look, there's something here." I turned to look. It was a palm-sized object, wrapped layer upon layer in oil paper. A small label was attached, with katakana writing a string of characters. Jujing carefully opened the oil paper package. Inside was a ceramic object. Unclear if it was a plate or an ornament. It was flat overall, slightly concave in the middle, surrounded by strange patterns. In short, it was very distinctive. I asked Muse and Jujing to hold that object, like a trophy, and took a commemorative photo of them. As I pressed the shutter, I noticed Muse's injured hand was touching the plate. I reminded him, "Hey, Muse, don't get blood on it." Just then, a low rumbling sound suddenly echoed through the room. We tensely looked around. The sound lasted about 10 seconds, before silence fell again. Muse asked, "Was that an earthquake just now?" Jujing replied, "Could it be that we touched things carelessly and made them angry?" I couldn't tell if Jujing was joking or being serious. He carefully rewrapped the trophy and put it back in its place. By now, we all felt this study had become very uncomfortable. So without a word, we walked out. As we left, I pointed my camera at the empty study and pressed the shutter once more. After taking this photo, only 2 shots remained on the film. Leaving the study, we continued forward, planning to go upstairs. The air in the hallway was still heavy, but perhaps because we had left the study, our moods seemed to lighten a little. When we reached the staircase, I asked Muse and Jujing to stand side by side in the genkan for a photo. Through the viewfinder, I saw them both making funny faces, so I pressed the shutter and said, "This photo turned out pretty good." But they didn't seem to be listening to me. I saw their gazes fixed on something behind me. I quickly turned around. I saw the study door was slowly opening. All 3 of us stared intently at that door, under the beams of our 3 flashlights. The door slowly swung until it faced us directly before stopping, as if to block whatever was behind it. While staring, I backed up towards the main door of the genkan, then grabbed the doorknob and tried to turn it. But the door seemed to be fixed from the outside. It didn't move at all. Muse noticed my actions and looked at me questioningly. My voice trembled involuntarily as I said, This door won't open." Just then, Jujing suddenly gasped. Muse and I quickly turned our attention to the study door, where Jujing's flashlight was pointing. A few white fingers were visible, as if a dead person was gripping the door. In that instant, the 3 of us seemed frozen in place. This feeling was completely different from a nightmare. Because of the extreme fear, my legs trembled. My whole body felt weak, and I couldn't make a sound. I could only stare motionlessly at that hand. And above that hand, a black shadow gradually emerged from behind the door. At that moment, I felt my heart was about to explode. I wanted to run, but my body would only tremble. I could only stare blankly at the study. The black shadow extended further. It was a head. Under short black hair was a woman's deathly pale face. The woman gradually became visible from the shadows behind the door. Her eyes were wide open, extremely unnaturally large for a human. The moment I saw those eyes, Muse screamed, "AHHH," and ran screaming towards the 2nd floor. Muse's voice seemed to break the paralysis spell on Jujing and me. Our bodies could finally move. We also immediately ran towards the staircase. Our flashlight beams shook violently.
I ran for my life, afraid of falling behind.
After going upstairs, the first thing I saw was a wooden door at the end of the hallway. Muse, leading the charge, pushed the wooden door open.
Jujing and I also ran into the room and tightly closed the door behind us.
We leaned our backs against the door,
panting heavily.
No one could speak. My heart was pounding wildly
as I started to assess if this room was safe. Newspapers were pasted on the windows.
The light was dim,
but my eyes had adjusted to the darkness. I could see quite clearly even without the flashlight.
At the very back of the room,
by the window, there was a desk, with some small items scattered on it.
On the right was a closet. On the left was a bed. The whole room was decorated in a cute, girly style, which felt utterly out of place with our current situation. We held our breath,
listening for any sound outside the door.
No sound came from the stairs or hallway. Only an overwhelming, crushing dead silence.
I don't know how long it was.
Just as we were calming down a bit,
a man's voice came from outside. Hey. A wave of tension washed over me again.
The sound seemed to originate from outside the house.
Or perhaps it had drifted up from the first floor.
Jujing asked, her voice ragged and hoarse.
Could it be someone coming to save us?
Neither Musey nor I answered. The noise we had just made
could very well have carried outside, drawing unwanted attention.
Yet, the surrounding area felt utterly devoid of life.
Who could say if that voice truly belonged to a human?
Then, the same call echoed from outside once more.
Hey!
This time, it sounded closer.
Hearing this second call,
Rujin couldn't restrain a shout. We're in here.
Help us.
Musey and I remained silent. Perhaps her thoughts mirrored my own,
both suspecting the thing outside wasn't human at all. Rujin continued to yell, Hey!
We're here. Help us, please. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear any response from outside.
At that very moment,
a low, guttural voice emanated from beyond the door.
Are you in there?
This sudden, unexpected voice
sent the three of us stumbling back in terror, nearly falling.
We scrambled away from the door.
Our collective gaze was fixed, paralyzed on the door.
We waited, but the door remained still. The silence was somehow more frightening.
Consumed by dread, I stared intently at the door, a frantic mantra looping in my mind. We're discovered. Have to run. Have to run.
We're discovered.
Have to run.
We're discovered.
Have to run.
Rujin, perhaps consumed by guilt
that her shouts had brought this unknown situation upon us, slumped despondently to the floor. Her head hung low, her entire body trembling. I forced my voice into a semblance of calm.
So, maybe we should jump from the window? Mused immediately agreed. Yes, let's jump. It's the second floor. Should be fine.
Yeah, right.
Second floor.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, let's jump. Yeah, yes. No problem, no problem, no problem, it's fine.
As Mused spoke,
he gradually descended into incoherent muttering.
What's wrong with you?
I grabbed his shoulders and shook him hard.
Musey's head lolled limply, his eyes vacant and unfocused.
As if he didn't even see me.
I called for Yu Jing to help, but she just kept her head bowed,
sitting there, shaking. Had Fee really reduced them to this? Seeing no other option, I left them for the moment
and began tearing the newspaper from the window when the glass was finally exposed, revealing the distant glow of a street lamp.
A wave of relief washed over me.
I was so overwhelmed, I nearly wept.
Just as I peeled away the final piece of newspaper,
two silhouettes were reflected in the glass.
I spun around in terror. Somehow, without my noticing, Mused and Yu Jing were standing side by side, their backs to me.
Are you two okay? I asked.
They didn't turn.
They just stood there, facing away. Mused spoke, his tone flat and devoid of inflection.
Jumping directly from the window is too dangerous. Yu Jing echoed in the same monotone.
Yes. Too dangerous. Mused said, there's rope in the next room.
I'll get it. I'll go fetch it. Zhu Jing parroted again. Yes, I'll go fetch it.
With that, they opened the door.
And strode out, their footsteps unnaturally
Neither one
heavy.
glanced my way.
A bizarre and
Terrifying thought surfaced in my mind. Were they even the people I knew anymore?
what should I do? Run alone?
But what about them? No, I can't abandon them. Then, I heard Musette and Zhu Jing's
Heavy, echoing footsteps in the hallway, followed by the sound of a door opening and closing.
After the house fell quiet again, I could faintly hear muffled noises through the wall.
As if they were talking, but the words were indistinct. I pressed my ear against the wall, trying to hear more clearly. Suddenly, a series of low, guttural chuckles came from next door. The laughter was chilling. I had never heard them laugh like that.
That sound solidified my resolve. I had to escape. Now,
I tried to open the window latch. It was probably rusted shut.
and my hands wouldn't stop shaking.
It refused to budge. Just then, the sound of a door opening came from the next room. In a panic, I slammed my hand against the glass. It didn't break.
From the hallway came a slow, creaking footstep.
Then another, closer.
My eyes darted around the room.
In desperation, I scrambled under the bed, holding my breath, trying to make myself invisible.
The door opened. 2 people entered.
From under the bed, I saw their shoes. It was Musette and Zhu Jing. They stood by the bed for a moment,
as if confirming my presence. Beside their shoes,
I saw a length of rope dangling down. Had they really just gone to get rope?
I felt a faint flicker of relief. I even considered crawling out.
But the memory of their earlier,
bizarre behavior and that laughter
made me decide to wait,
to observe.
Lying under the bed,
I stared fixedly at Musette and Zhu Jing's feet.
They stood still for a while,
then moved towards the window.
They stopped at the wall. I heard the window slam open,
with unsettling ease.
Then the sound of it sliding along its track. The latch I had struggled with so futile, they had opened effortlessly. Then Musette spoke. "Tie this on. Fasten this." Zhu Jing responded. "Yes, fasten this."
Their voices remained utterly flat. Then, their shoes moved together to the table.
They seemed to be busy with something there.
Before long,
they seemed to finish.
They walked back to the window.
Their shoes disappeared from my view. They must have climbed onto the windowsill. Musette's voice came, "Tie it around your neck tight. Let's escape." Zhu Jing responded. "Yes, let's escape."
The moment they finished speaking,
the table jerked violently towards the window. One of its legs lifted clear of the floor.
A loud, sickening crash followed, a heavy thud, like a weight hitting the wall outside. Then came a series of
softer, repetitive thumping sounds. The sounds grew weaker,
fading into a faint, creaking friction.
Under the bed, I curled into a tight ball,
trembling uncontrollably.
I didn't understand what had happened. That intermittent, creaking sound never fully ceased.
It persisted, echoing eerily. Fear numbed me,
stupefied me,
stole all sense of time.
I don't know how long I lay there under the bed.
Suddenly, I heard another sound, separate from the window, a different kind of creak. It came from beyond the door, and it was slowly, steadily approaching this room.
Finally, the sound stopped right outside the door. Something was standing there.
I clamped a trembling hand over my mouth, terrified a whimper might escape. Then, a sharp click. The door opened.
The hallway was pitch black.
I couldn't see clearly, but I sensed a presence standing there.
I froze. My gaze locked on the darkness of the doorway.
A pair of deathly pale, bare feet stepped inside. They looked like a man's feet. The feet moved slowly around the room, as if tracing a circle, finally stopping right beside the bed. My heartbeat and breath became uncontrollably rapid.
I pressed my hand even harder over my nose and mouth, petrified the owner of those feet would hear me.
Then suddenly bent down and reach under the bed to grab me.
All I could do was fight to keep silent, to not make a sound. The feet remained by the bed for a time,
then slowly moved back towards the door.
They vanished into the darkness. The door slowly swung shut.
Staying here means being found.
A raw, primal urge to survive jolted my body into motion. I scrambled out from under the bed. I had barely emerged, still crouching,
when I saw them. 3 ropes tied to the table leg. One rope was tied to the leg at one end. Its other end lay on the tabletop, weighted down by a fist-sized rock.
The other 2 ropes were pulled taut, stretching out the window.
The tension on these 2 ropes was immense.
The table was tilted. One leg caught on the windowsill.
Were the other ends of these ropes them? I couldn't finish the thought. I wouldn't let myself, yet an icy chill crawled up my spine nonetheless.
No, I have to run.
Now. I desperately ran through every possible escape plan.
But the memory of those bare feet blocked every option. Jumping was the only choice left.
But seeing those ropes, I couldn't bring myself to approach the window.
I did not imagine what was dangling outside,
but to just wait here for death. I forced myself to stand.
I would untie the rope with the rock and use it to climb down. My fingers clawed frantically at the knot. It began to loosen. It was almost free.
I felt a sudden, piercing sensation of being watched. I glanced towards the door. It was still closed.
Nothing there. I let out a shaky breath just as my eyes returned to the rope. A movement in my peripheral vision made me freeze.
Outside the window on the sill were 2 semicircular shapes. Looking closer, I saw. It was Musid and Jujing.
Their heads were tilted, peering in from outside the window. Only the tops of their heads and their eyes visible, side by side. Motionless, staring at me. Their eyes held not a trace of human emotion.
I recoiled in horror.
My back was slamming hard against the door.
The impact echoed.
And from further down the hall, a voice called out, "Hey!"
Simultaneously,
a slow, deliberate footstep sounded in the corridor, moving steadily closer to this room.
My mind shattered into panicked fragments.
The eyes at the window, the voice outside the door. Where could I go? In blind desperation, I scrambled into the wardrobe. But the moment I was inside,
I knew it was a terrible hiding place.
It was too late. The bedroom door creaked open.
I held my breath, not daring to move a muscle.
The person moved slowly around the room. Footsteps creaked on the floorboards. They made a circuit of the room,
then returned to the doorway.
The door closed.
Had they left?
I relaxed slightly,
shifting my cramped body.
The floorboard beneath me let out a sharp groan. Instantly, a man's voice came from right outside the wardrobe.
"Ah,
is it in here?"
I frantically grabbed the inside of the wardrobe door. A powerful force pulled from the other side, trying to yank it open.
I held on with all my strength.
The force on the other side intensified.
I was losing my grip. The door shook violently. It could fly open at any second. I started sobbing, screaming the words over and over. "I'm not in here. I'm not in here. I'm not in here." The struggle felt endless.
Suddenly, my grip slipped. The door was wrenched open.
A blindingly bright light flooded in. I squeezed my eyes shut against the painful glare.
I can't see anything.
The person outside seemed to be saying something to me, but I couldn't make out any of it.
My consciousness had completely shattered.
I just kept screaming, "I'm not here. I'm not here."
Later, the police who arrived saved me.
After that, I was questioned many times at the police station.
They repeatedly asked me what happened, why I went there,
why those 2 people died. What were you doing? In the interrogation room,
I explained in detail everything
that happened inside that house. At first, the police suspected the 3 of us had taken drugs, but the test results came back clearly negative. Of course,
I was also suspected of being involved in the deaths of Kurosawa and Take,
but an examination of the room and the marks from the ropes
proved I wasn't lying.
my suspicion was cleared.
However, my eyewitness testimony was almost entirely disregarded.
It was said that, in that house, aside from the three of us,
No other footprints were found, because the older officer, when having me sign the completed statement, muttered just one sentence. Saved by hiding in a closet again, huh?
in the end, the cause of death for Kurosawa and
Was
Take
determined to be unexplained sudden suicide. One final thing to add,
the police confiscated my camera.
and did not return the film inside. During the interrogation, they only asked
When I
me
took
the photos of the study and the entrance.
If there was anyone else nearby,
I replied, no,
the interrogating officer showed a puzzled expression.
but did not press further.
As for the trophy, the words on the label were in the language of some ethnic group. It meant the path to the underworld. That much was quickly figured out.
But beyond that, I couldn't learn anything more.
That thing,
It might still be in that house even now.
and ever since that incident, whenever I look out the window late at night, I always see two people, just the parts around their eyes,
Staring intently at me,
doctors and friends sympathize with me.
saying it's psychological trauma.
It will heal with time.
Don't worry too much. But just tonight, the two heads peering through the window actually spoke to me in a flat, monotonous voice.
We're waiting for you.
Yes, we're waiting for you. I'm not sure if this is an illusion. Perhaps if I go back there one more time.
I'll be able to understand.
The above, the White House, is now concluded.
Next we begin the Abandoned Dormitory. This
Was
post,
published on the Japanese Ninja Forum on July 10th,
it was still
2016.
set to low verification. This is something I experienced when I was 17.
It was during the summer vacation of my second
My
year
friend,
in high school.
Akun,
Decided
and
to go
I
explore a nearby abandoned dormitory.
The building stood alone outside the town,
It must have been abandoned for over 10 years.
because back in elementary school,
I had been there several times.
even back then, the building was already abandoned. It was overgrown with weeds and trees.
And next to it was a dried up, cracked swimming pool. But when we were kids, we only went during the day. We playmates used it as a secret base, often playing cards.
In front of the sealed-up main entrance,
Back then, the most we did was press against the door and peek into the dark entrance hall.
even on a summer's day, you could feel the chill from inside. To the right of the entrance hall seemed to be a management office. Next to it, on the wall,
Hung a wooden board.
on the board, written in brush ink, were the names of people I didn't know. I guessed they were probably nameplates of employees who once lived there. Akun and I decided to go explore that abandoned dormitory after he came over to my house one night. After dinner,
We were playing a horror game on the computer. And as we talked,
the conversation turned to the childhood secret base.
in my memory, that place felt even creepier than this game. Old memories came flooding back. We talked about all the trends. When we played at the secret base, we got more and more excited.
Forgetting about the game entirely.
Akun is super into horror. Besides playing horror games, he also planned to watch horror movies all night.
So, getting excited,
He directly suggested, then why don't we just go inside that abandoned dormitory and take a look?
I wasn't particularly afraid of exploring abandoned buildings. After all, I often played truth or dare with classmates.
I just thought, since we had already bathed.
Going all the way to the outskirts was a hassle.
So I refused Akun. But he kept pestering me,
And I finally relented.
afraid my parents would find out.
We kept playing games until after M before sneaking out.
We brought flip phones that could take pictures.
A flashlight, wallets, and I secretly took a pack of my dad's cigarettes.
With a sense of adventure,
We walked towards the abandoned dormitory,
I had thought it was troublesome.
but once outside,
The cool night air felt quite pleasant on the skin.
This is, after all, a rural town.
Everyone goes to bed early.
It was quiet all around. The stars in the sky were beautiful, and the sound of insects was pleasant. We walked slowly, cigarettes in our mouths,
Chatting about silly, risky topics.
It felt very comfortable. After about 20 minutes, we were nearing the abandoned dormitory. The houses around became fewer, and the weeds grew thicker. Our conversation gradually shifted from risky topics to something a bit scarier. Then a coon suddenly said, "Hey,
Do you know what that abandoned building used to be? I replied.
wasn't it just a staff dormitory? You think a staff dormitory would have a swimming pool?" It was true. There was a facility next to the building that looked like a pool.
All those years.
An old staff dormitory definitely wouldn't have a swimming pool.
A coon continued. I heard from my grandma before.
That place wasn't a pool at all. It was a reservoir.
I asked. A reservoir that big?
Really?
Of course, it's true. I heard the people in that building long ago.
All depended on that reservoir for their lives.
But then one day, the people living there,
Started showing symptoms of poisoning, one after
and
another.
then they died. Later, an investigation found
That at the bottom of that reservoir.
was the corpse of a woman infected with cholera or some virus.
Oh.
That's horrible.
Even if you drank that water,
coon said
you
with a
wouldn't
serious
necessarily
face.
die, right? My grandma said that because of this incident, the staff dormitory was sealed up and eventually abandoned.
I was half convinced.
I'd never heard this before.
But adults basically never talked about the abandoned dormitory.
It felt like this was just a ghost story.
made up by a coon's grandma. But perhaps because a coon told it so convincingly, I suddenly felt the abandoned dormitory before us had become even more sinister
and terrifying. I got goosebumps all over.
At this moment, the abandoned
dormitory was surrounded by even denser trees. Starlight could hardly penetrate.
Although I couldn't see the details clearly, as my eyes adjusted to the dark,
I could roughly make out the buildings. Grey exterior and silhouette. Compared to my childhood, it was even more dilapidated.
Cracks were everywhere on the walls. Straight ahead was the main entrance we often played near as kids.
The pool
was
to the
still
left
dirty.
was that pool. Its base
was a concrete platform about half a meter high, surrounded by a fence
and barbed wire.
When we were kids, we
thought
didn't
it was
understand.
a swimming pool, but now, seeing it enclosed
It really
so
must
tightly,
be a reservoir inside.
a coon suggested, "Hey, let's go check out the reservoir first." With that, he walked over enthusiastically.
After what he just said, the eerie feeling in my heart lingered.
I couldn't muster any enthusiasm now, and followed him with weak steps. We climbed onto the concrete platform and stood outside the fence, looking in. This reservoir did look like a swimming pool.
The waterproof lining at the bottom had long been faded and cracked by the sun. There were many weeds
at the water's edge.
but these weeds were also with
In
it.
the darkness, they looked somewhat like a woman's
A
long
wave
hair.
of nausea rose in me. A coon shone his flashlight
Around the bottom of the pool.
"There's nothing here,"
He said,
"Let's go check out the inside of the building."
as he spoke. He shone the flashlight towards the abandoned dormitory. "Hey, what's that?" a coon suddenly exclaimed. I was startled. What happened? Just now, at the second floor window, something seemed to move.
"Are you sure you didn't, Missy?" A coon's hand was trembling slightly now,
Whether from excitement or fear. I took the flashlight from him.
and shone it towards the second floor. A row of windows was neatly aligned.
Most of the glass was broken.
Inside, I could see a corridor. Along the corridor was a row of wooden doors.
Probably the rooms of the employees back then.
I said to a coon, "There's nothing on the second floor."
Maybe it was just a falling leaf earlier.
No, I really saw something move. Could it be someone else came here to test their courage?
I shouted towards the building. "Hey, is anyone there?"
Of course, there was no response.
Even the surrounding insect
chirping had stopped.
Only dead silence remained. After a brief silence, I said to Akun, "See? No one. Stop being so paranoid. You're making me nervous too." Akun said, "I'm not nervous.
Let's just go inside and take a look."
Ah, I hesitated.
But it's all locked up.
Let's just forget it. It's fine. Let's just go check.
Maybe one of the windows can be opened. Reluctantly, I followed behind Akun to the front of the abandoned dormitory. The outdoor staircase was rusted,
feeling like it could fall apart any moment.
We managed to climb to the second floor landing.
We tried to open the emergency exit door,
but it was locked.
We went up to the third floor landing. Here, the glass in the door was broken. It seemed we could climb in.
Akun reached out and pulled hard. The door opened. The lock on this door was broken too. He said jokingly, "Hey,
this might be a good spot for couples to meet up."
Akun grinned mischievously,
but I was feeling more and more uneasy. I shone the flashlight on the glass on the floor.
It looked like it had been smashed by someone, and not too long ago.
Akun said, "Hey,
stop looking at that.
Look inside."
Following where Akun pointed,
I saw a straight corridor. On the right was a row of windows. On the left were 5 wooden doors, meaning 5 rooms. At the end of the corridor
was an internal staircase leading downstairs. Akun continued, "Hey, why are you always spacing out?
Just let me hold the flashlight. Let's check the rooms one by one."
I was having second thoughts, but Akun had already grabbed the flashlight
and started walking towards the first room. The building was filled with the smell of rotting wood and mold. It felt damp. The first room's door was pushed open. Inside was indeed like a staff dormitory. The layout was simple.
Straight ahead was a large window,
leading to a balcony.
To the left was a wooden bed. To the right was a particularly large built-in wardrobe. There were no belongings inside.
It was completely empty.
The 5 rooms on the third floor were all similar.
Some wardrobes had mirrors inside. Some beds had rotten mattresses. Nothing particularly noteworthy. We prepared to go down to the second floor, since Akun had said he saw a figure there earlier.
We walked cautiously, not speaking.
An indescribable tension enveloped us. At the turn from the third to the second floor, there was a small toilet. Next to it was a dirty mirror. When the flashlight beam swept over it, it was blurry, making it feel like there were many people inside. I didn't dare look as I passed,
following Akun quickly down the stairs.
The second floor corridor was the same as the third. There was no sign of any figure here, nor any traces of recent activity. So we proceeded to open and check the rooms one by one. When we reached the 4th room, I felt something strange. The shape of this room's doorknob was different from the others. The others were round. This one was somewhat retro, oval-shaped, with decorative patterns. I reached out and turned it. The door creaked open. This room clearly showed signs someone had been there.
There was a mattress on the bed,
a sheet on the mattress,
and a blanket.
But everything was filthy,
whether from mold over time
or never being washed.
A foul smell hit us. The wardrobe door in this room was open. Inside were a few wire hangers,
with t-shirts so dirty they were nearly black.
This scene made Akun and I look at each other.
He whispered, "Hey,
does someone live here?"
I also lowered my voice. Could it be a homeless person? We live in a small town. We don't usually see homeless people around, but there might be some.
Maybe they live in places like this.
Then Akun seemed to find something else. He pulled the wardrobe open wider with the flashlight.
"Hey,"
he said, "there are a lot of books in here."
I hurried over to look.
Deep inside the wardrobe, many old books were piled haphazardly.
These books, in both text
and illustrations, exuded a sense of a bygone era, but it wasn't nostalgic. It felt more like a curse, somewhat like the old Imperial Japan period, with an indescribable eeriness. I said to Akun, "Stop looking, it's too disgusting." As soon as I finished speaking,
A pat sound suddenly came from the corridor outside.
like a footstep, my heart skipped several beats. My first thought was that the homeless person had returned, but that pat sound was very strange. It sounded at intervals, but each time it felt closer. I suddenly realized someone outside
Was checking the rooms one by one. I quickly signaled a coon to hide in the wardrobe. After closing the wardrobe door, it was dark and smelly inside.
with a moldy odor. A coon and I squeezed together, both trembling with fear.
Then, a click came from the next room, followed by a faint sound.
Approaching our room. But there were no footsteps. It was like a piece of clothing
Blown by the wind, drifting over.
That sound stopped outside the room we were in. At this moment, aside from a coon's and my uncontrollable breathing
And heartbeats.
it seemed all other sounds had ceased.
Then,
Muffled speech sounded outside the wardrobe. We were too scared to move a muscle,
I felt the blood in my entire body run cold.
and that voice outside mumbled indistinctly. Yes, yes,
Ah. And things like that. I couldn't understand what it meant.
it just kept repeating.
Maybe for several minutes, before the sound gradually faded.
As if it had left.
Then a click came from the next room.
This whole process couldn't have lasted more than 10 minutes. But
To a coon and me, it felt like several hours.
we waited a while longer.
And only after confirming there was no movement outside did we slowly open the wardrobe door. Although there was nothing outside after we emerged,
And nothing in the corridor.
we still couldn't stop trembling.
A coon's voice trembled as he spoke.
11350 47 17
Maybe because I was too tense.
47. I couldn't even speak. 21 now. 20 we.
I could only
I
nod
think we should go back.
and follow carefully behind a coon towards the first floor. A coon was probably also frightened into confusion. He thought that instead of going up to the third floor and going through the corridor to the emergency stairs,
It would be faster to go directly down to the first floor emergency
it should be
exit.
closer. But after going down to the first floor, we discovered the layout here was different from the second and third floors. It wasn't individual rooms here,
But a common area, like a cafeteria. It was empty and vast.
and very dark. The sound of dripping water echoed occasionally.
Judging by the upstairs layout,
The emergency exit should be on the opposite side.
we walked on tiptoe. Suddenly, footsteps came from the staircase direction.
My heart nearly jumped out of my chest in fear. A coon was also panicked.
He pushed me as we hid in the kitchen behind the cafeteria,
We crouched by the wall, listening as the footsteps.
slowly descended to the first floor.
The sound passed right in front of us.
Then came the sound of a chair being pulled. It was as if someone had walked to the management counter and sat down.
A coon and I lay on the ground and slowly peeked out,
We saw a man wearing a security guard uniform.
sitting with his back to us at the management counter.
In this dark space, his hands were on the table as if he were reading.
And on the table,
Who knows when a tall stack of books had appeared.
did this man really exist? A coon and I were instantly frozen in terror,
Lying on the ground, not daring to move.
and the man kept making murmuring sounds. But since his back was to us, we couldn't make out what he was saying.
Suddenly, the man shouted loudly.
Immediately after,
A deafening alarm blared throughout the building.
a coon and I screamed in fright. The man in the security guard uniform,
Remained seated.
his shoulders shaking constantly, as if he were laughing.
I was so scared my legs gave way.
This isn't a figure of speech.
I literally couldn't stand without falling. A coon stood up and ran towards the emergency
I
exit.
could only crawl on the ground. Fortunately, the distance wasn't far. I crawled quickly, barely keeping up with a coon to the exit. But a coon couldn't unlock the door. I managed to stand up,
urging him frantically to hurry,
A coon's face was deathly pale.
struggling with the lock. The alarm was still blaring piercingly.
Suddenly, I felt a gaze on my back.
I turned to look,
The man in the security guard uniform was standing behind us.
staring fixedly at us.
Or rather, not exactly staring, because his mouth eyes, and nostrils were all seemingly stuffed with dirt. His entire face looked like it had been smeared with mud.
I had just managed to stand up.
But collapsed to the ground again, terrified by what I saw. Then a coon got the door open. He glanced back before exiting,
And also saw that thing. He let out a terrified scream.
but immediately reacted, grabbed me, and pulled me out the door.
Once we were outside the building, the alarm abruptly stopped.
The man at the emergency exit was gone too.
It was as if nothing had just happened. I was so scared I felt completely drained.
Unable to even crawl. A coon could still run, but he was like a madman, screaming and shouting as he ran. But after just a few steps,
He tripped over something at his feet and fell heavily to the ground.
the disappearance of the alarm and the strange man.
Had lessened my fear a little. I forced myself to stand and walked to a coon's side.
By now, a coon had gotten up from the ground,
His forehead and knee were scraped and...
bleeding profusely.
But there was no time to care.
Seeing me approach, he yelled, "Run!"
We ran for our lives.
We didn't stop until we reached the
And
town. Saw a convenience store still open. We ran over,
And collapsed under the light in front of the store, gasping for breath.
After a while, a coon finally said,
Ouch, it hurts so much. His face and leg were bleeding heavily.
he could barely stand.
I quickly got up, went into the convenience store, and bought band-aids,
Disinfectant, bandages,
and feeling my throat parched.
bought 2 bottles of juice.
While paying at the counter, I instinctively glanced at a coon outside,
I saw a woman standing beside him.
looking down at him.
My first thought was, how?
Who's that big sister? Maybe she can't sleep and...
Seeing a coon injured, came over to ask if he's okay. This guy really has luck with women.
I quickly finished paying and walked outside.
How? Why is a coon alone again? I asked the coon. Where did that big sister go? A coon let out a confused "huh?"
I explained again.
After hearing this,
A coon's whole body began to tremble.
he shouted loudly, "What nonsense are you talking about? There was no big sister." Seeing a coon's reaction,
I handed a coon a drink.
and crouched down to tend to his wounds. A coon's face was deathly pale.
His body trembling incessantly. After treating his wounds, as I helped him up, he said in a hoarse voice,
That,
"The big sister in white you mentioned. She must be the woman who made me fall."
as soon as we escaped from the emergency exit, I saw her. That woman was wearing a dirty white dress,
Her skin looked like it had been soaked in water for a
all
long time.
wrinkled. Almost half the flesh on her face was gone. Her eyes, mouth, nostrils were just black holes. She kept staring at me with those holes.
So I was so scared I let go of you, trying to run around her. But she still pushed me hard.
And I fell to the ground.
As a coon spoke, sweat poured from his forehead. I felt cold sweat running down my back too. I asked, then, "Did something follow us back?"
This sentence made a coon break down completely.
He cried uncontrollably. I helped him walk home, comforting him, saying, "It's
Sleeping
okay."
should make it better. After returning home, not knowing any proper exorcism rituals, we got a lot of salt from the kitchen,
And sprinkled it around my room.
pouring a lot, especially at the door and windows.
That night, we kept the lights on.
Neither of us slept, and we didn't speak a single word.
Only the sound of a coon sobbing was heard from time to time. Early the next morning, a coon went home. Before he left, I told him,
You should still tell an adult about this. If necessary, go to a temple for an exorcism.
A coon didn't answer, and from then on, he gradually distanced himself from me.
He seemed to be avoiding me.
Perhaps he didn't want anyone mentioning,
The matter of being haunted by a female
or perhaps
ghost
he didn't want to see me.
and be reminded of that night.
Anyway, I don't know, and I don't want to know. Because of that night's exploration, to this day, whenever I see a security guard or hear an alarm sound, my whole body trembles uncontrollably. Alright, that's the full text of the post.
So, this story ends here. I am Kevin. See you in the next episode.